Hi, so in this video I'm going to show you how to make a dessert or treat that I find especially nice sometimes, and it's made with this Pascha organic chocolate chips. This is a brand that I really like because they don't have anything in here except for 100% cacao, or on the ingredients organic chocolate liqueur. So it's a nice one because we're going to try to avoid adding any kind of actual sweeteners to this recipe. And why would you make this kind of dessert without sweeteners? So I found that on my own health journey, having to deal with things like mold toxicity and candida infections, there's definitely a lot of value in having something that can kind of satisfy the sweet tooth without getting any form of sugar in the system, which will obviously feed those types of pathogens in the body. Now, chocolate in and of itself is thought to be potentially a moldy food, so I'll kind of let that be your discretion as far as whether or not you feel like you can safely consume it if you're dealing with a mold toxicity journey right now. So let's show you kind of how to do this. So the first step is I like to work with this mini muffin mold and these silicone mini muffin cups. What I normally do is I'll take about half a bag of the Pascha chips, put them in my little stovetop saucepan here, and then I melt that down. I'll usually melt that down with about a half tablespoon of coconut oil and just a pinch of sea salt. And then I usually put about 12 drops of the better stevia, liquid stevia, into this, just to take the bitterness out of the chocolate. This won't be really sweet, but it's gonna help make the whole chocolate cup we're making here taste better for sure. So next, what I do is I'll actually go through and with a spoon kind of spoon it just a little bit into each cup, and the idea is you want to just cover the bottom of it because we're building it in layers and we don't want to have a chocolate cup that's hopefully hugely thick unless you like your chocolate cups that way. But we're going to try to make it look sort of like that idea of a Reese's peanut butter cup, just homemade style. All right, so we've stuck this in the fridge for about 20 minutes. It's fairly hard, ready to go for the next cream base layer. You can also stick this in the freezer. It'll go a little quicker if you've got that space. Okay, so what we're gonna do today are two different middle section flavors. The first one is gonna be a coffee flavor, and the second one is gonna be a matcha flavor. And I found these two really work nice with the chocolate, and I really like those flavor combinations. So feel free to kind of pick one or both and experiment and see how you like this. So what we're gonna do, normally I don't measure, but for the purposes of making this easy to follow, today I will measure. We're just gonna spoon, this is the coconut manna. Any kind is good, but I always try to look for one that's organic. That's a better option if you can find it in your grocery store. We're gonna spoon half a cup of this into the measuring cup here. Now, the way that I get this nice and liquidy, viscous, ready to stir is I'll actually put this entire jar into a larger stovetop pan of water that I've just boiled, and I'll let it just sit there for about 15-20 minutes until it gets soft. I would definitely not recommend microwaving this. If you do want to try to microwave it, I would try to actually do it in very small sections of time, little by little, because I've had experiences in the past where I've stuck the whole jar in and then the bottom gets kind of burnt and it just isn't a good outcome. So I like to do the stovetop also because I don't really love working with microwaves, and that's just easier to do things on the stovetop for me. So what you're gonna do is spoon your coconut manna into one of these bowls. And we'll kind of do both of these, get those set up right away. So we'll do another one here for the other bowl. All right, spoon that in. Okay. All right, so for the first bowl, we'll make this one the coffee flavored cream. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to take my coffee concentrate liquid, which I showed how to make in another video, and we're gonna actually just put some in here. And for this, I'm not gonna measure because I feel like you can kind of do this to taste depending on how strong you want your coffee cream flavor to be. And as you can see, as you kind of stir this in, everything gets a little bit more liquidy. we're gonna kind of do this in a certain order because I've noticed with certain ingredients when I mix them together, the coconut manna will start to chunk up a little bit, and that can make it hard to spoon into these chocolate cups. So we're gonna do this kind of in a specific order so we can avoid as much chunking as possible. So the next thing I'm gonna add is this hydrolyzed collagen protein vanilla cream by Biotics. Actually, this is a really awesome, versatile collagen peptide product. I put it in smoothies in the morning. I actually use it to bake sweetener-free cookies to kind of use to give a little sweet boost and vanilla boost to the recipe I'm using. And I also use it as an ingredient in my cream filling for these chocolate cups. Has a really actually awesome taste considering, you know, sometimes people don't love protein powders, but this one has actually a really nice flavor to it. So again, a little under a scoop, I'm gonna kind of sprinkle it throughout here. And again, we're just gonna kind of increase the sweetness of the coconut manna. In fact, I might do just about a half scoop on this one. And then stir it up, and you can see it's getting a little clumpy and chunky. That's okay though. So at this point, we should have a fairly nice coffee cream flavor. We just need to get it a little bit easier to work with so we can put it in the cup. So next ingredient I'm gonna add is the MCT oil. And again, it doesn't really matter which brand you get. I just would get one that, you know, has nothing but MCT oil on it. If you can get non-GMO or organic, that's best. I'm just gonna do kind of a little bit of a splash on here. MCT oil is really awesome for helping your body burn fat more efficiently. You don't actually need any help from your gallbladder to digest MCT oil. It's very easily absorbable in the intestine. So it's a nice addition for people who are having trouble digesting fat, who need to increase their fat nutrient absorption. And the other nice thing about MCT oil is it's great at helping to gently work with overgrowth of things like candida or bacteria in the gut. It does have more of an antimicrobial property to it. And so when you're on a candida diet, for example, it can just be a nice addition to use daily in small amounts to help shift the gut microbiome in a more healthy direction. Okay, so now we have our coffee cream. So that's ready to go. So we will now do the matcha flavored one. And for this, we're gonna use 1 to 2 packets of the matcha I'm using is actually Peak Tea. You don't have to get this fancy if you don't want to. Any good quality matcha powder will do. It's just that I have this on hand, and I do like Peak Tea. It's very nice, clean. They triple test their tea for pesticides and mycotoxins and all the bad stuff, so I do like it from that perspective. So let's kind of stir this up and see. Sometimes I like to eyeball and just see kind of what the strength of the matcha is looking to be here. And I'm generally a person who likes a little bit of a stronger flavor to come through, both on the coffee and the matcha end, so I'm going to generally be more generous with my additions here. So I'm going to use 2 of these Peak packets just to get it to the strength that I want it. And again, just kind of mix this in. So it should turn a pretty nice green color here. And now for this one, it's not clumping up quite as much as the coffee because for whatever reason, that coffee concentrate tends to clump the manna up a bit. And if you did want it a little more liquidy than this, you could always add just a little bit of melted coconut oil and just continue to stir to get it to look more like this, because this is going to be a little easier to spoon into the cups here in a second. So next, same thing, I'm going to add a half scoop or so of the collagen peptides just to kind of, again, boost the sweetness of this. And in addition, I'm going to put just a touch of this Smart Monk fruit powder, and this is a nice quality one. This is one that I use and have had really good success with. And with powder, you really just need like the tiniest little amount. So I've got a half teaspoon, which is pretty big, but you can see that's about as much as I'm going to use for this particular quantity, just to boost the sweetness of the matcha. You could also use liquid stevia if you want instead. That's perfectly fine. I just prefer the monk fruit. And I'm gonna stir this up here. And you can see it's kind of getting clumpy again because of the protein powder that we put in here. And so, similarly, we're going to add just a splash of the MCT oil to this to try to get it to be a little bit more liquidy. All right, and this is looking pretty ideal for what we're gonna do next. Okay, so generally when I have both of these made up, I would aim to do about half the tray in coffee and half the tray in matcha. And you will be able to tell which is which because after we pour the next chocolate layer, it won't be a perfect uniform chocolate envelope around the center. You're gonna be able to see a little bit of green or a little bit of brown peek through, and you'll know which is which is nice because then you can tell which one you're selecting when you go to eat it. All right, so next we're gonna go through, and again, the idea is to just cover the chocolate. You don't want a massive amount because this will stack and you'll get a really nice thickness to these if you just do kind of just the bare minimum layer on each of these. So essentially, once I get through to the halfway mark with the matcha, I won't do all of those quite yet. I'll take the coffee, and this one I'll just show you because it's a little chunkier, but still just fine. We can kind of put that in there, and I'll just take the back of the spoon and kind of press this down. And this one's maybe a little too much, so yeah, it's trial and error with this. You just kind of, this is a good amount right here. So just kind of, it won't be the end of the world if it's not a uniform layer like the matcha one, because once you get the chocolate layer on, it's one and the same essentially. But you could, like I said, still make this a little bit more liquidy by adding some melted coconut oil. It's perfectly fine. All right, and so I would kind of go through and complete this whole tray. One thing I thought of as I was making these two creams, you might be thinking, why add the monk fruit powder to the matcha versus the coffee? So again, it's a matter of your taste and what you prefer. I just find the matcha is slightly more bitter than the coffee. I like coffee flavor and I tend to like things a little bit more bitter, but just when I've done this in the past, I've noticed adding a little bit of monk fruit to the matcha helps to get that balance to the bitter sweet better as we're kind of mixing this up. All right, so in part 2, I will show you how to complete this recipe with the final chocolate layer. Pretty easy stuff, but we'll come back and do that in a minute. In part 2 of this video, I'm going to show how to complete making the chocolate cups. So taking the melted chocolate, all I'm doing is spooning it over the cream layer here, and these have been in the fridge for probably about an hour, I would say. You likely won't even need that long to get a good solid consistency. So this is just the final layer we're going to build in the chocolate cup. I won't take the time to do all these now, but once I would finish this tray, it would either go back in the fridge or back in the freezer. 30 to 60 minutes, you can kind of pull it out and test the silicone. If everything seems solid, you just peel the silicone cups off, and end product is going to look something like this. So you'll be able to see a little bit of the type on the side here. This is the coffee one that I did last time I did this. And these keep really well. I just throw mine in a Ziploc bag. I would recommend keeping them in the fridge. They'll stay longer and then won't be prone to melting if it's summer or it gets warm in your home during the day. So this is the monk fruit stevia based chocolate cup recipe.